Welcome in, belly up, have a seat, and grab a drink as we talk some Wingman Fantasy Football. Welcome into another edition of Wingman Fantasy Football, the League Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Furley, and as always, I'd like to thank all of you, or any of you who may be watching or listening to today's show. This is episode number 45, and we are at the bar with Katie M tonight. But before we get any further along, can I please make sure that everybody is in the room?
Wingmen assemble!
All right, let's get right into our news and notes. All right, we had a Thursday night game where we had the Minnesota Vikings playing against the Eagles on Thursday night, and we had several players in our managers' lineups. We're going to start with King George, who had Justin Jefferson versus Tampa Brady's Philadelphia Eagle defense. We also had They Took Our Jobs with Jalen Hurts in his lineup. Waddle Away had Devontae Smith in his lineup, and Team B had the other Philly receivers. A.J. Brown was in his lineup. Now for some other player news, we had Aaron Rodgers and J.K. Dobbins have both been officially placed on IR, and their 2023 seasons are over. Rams rookie receiver Puka Nacua missed practice with an oblique injury. Jerry Jeudy of the Broncos was a full participant in practice, and it looks like that he will be making his season debut this Sunday. Raiders receiver Jacoby Myers has been placed in the concussion protocol and is unlikely to be ready to play this week, but check back later in the week. Austin Eckler has not practiced at all this week with an ankle injury, and neither has DeAndre Hopkins, who too has not been practicing as he also has an ankle injury. We have Brandon Cooks, who has a strained MCL and will probably miss a week or two, although he was cited at practice today doing individual drills. We have Deontay Johnson, who looked like suffered a major hamstring injury last game, is now considered day-to-day. We also have Darren Waller also with a hamstring injury, has been logging in limited practices, and he insists that he will still be ready to play. And we have the Packers, Aaron Jones and Christian Watson, both with hamstring injuries, and their status for this Saturday is still up in the air, although they both said they should be ready to go. Now let's find out who's playing who in this week's matchup.
I want you! Down! Put!
This week's matchups.
All right, we're going to start off with the 0-1 Amazin Spidey versus the 1-0 Cubert's Rage. We also have a battle of two other winless teams as Alex's They Took Our Jobs is up against Reggie's Lionized. And another battle of winless teams with Nick's Waddle Away is going up against Corey's Mac Daddy 2s. And now we have some better matchups with the undefeated Katie's King George playing the 1-0 Ken's Tampa Brady. And our reigning champion, also 1-0 and current number one seed, Jimerson's Red Sox Nation, is up against the surprisingly 1-0 Bernie's Team B. Now, let's check in on our waiver wire, as we had several waiver claims go through, but only one player received multiple bids, and that was Rams rookie receiver Puka Nacua, who was acquired by Amazin Spidey for a $13 bid, as he outbid Lionized $1 bid. Also, we had Joshua Kelly, backup running back for the Chargers, went to Red Sox Nation for $13. We also had Tyler Algier go to Cubert's Rage for $6. We had Jordan Love go to Red Sox Nation for $5. The Cleveland defense was acquired by Amazin Spidey for $1, and the Cincinnati defense was acquired by Waddle Away for $0. Now it is time to bring in our guest to the bar. I'd like to welcome in Ms. Katie Marks, a.k.a. King George. Some of our poker players may know her as Queen Katie or the Murder Hornet. Welcome on in to the bar. Can I ask you, what are you drinking at the bar tonight?
Oh, yes. It's the beverage of champions, the good old H2O.
Well, you are definitely more responsible than me, as I am drinking, let's just say tequila.
That works too. It's all clear. Well, depends on the tequila.
So I noticed when I was running down the injuries that a lot of those guys are actually on your team.
It's great. I love it. Nothing better than a week one with a bunch of injuries.
So you have Deontay Johnson and Brandon Cooks that are injured this week. Is that correct?
Both of them. I also have Aaron Jones, so that should be interesting. I might have four
Aaron
players that
Jones.
play or
Aaron.
zero.
So Aaron Jones was an absolute monster. I thought I had a chance. I just needed Mostert to get another catch or two, so I thought. And then Jones had 2 huge touchdowns.
Yeah, well, for the long term, he also pulled up in the end zone with a hamstring. So it was a
Yeah,
moment of joy, but a
at
moment
least.
of sorrow.
Well, your team did awesome, and you only needed 6 players to beat my 8 players, as you had all those points in the bag. As you had
Thank
it in the
goodness,
bag
because
before your last game, you even went
I'm
through.
really
Yeah,
glad I
yeah,
left Drake London on the bench because he had a big old goose egg. So that was a good choice on my part.
yeah. Yeah. So on draft day, we picked side by side. You had the first overall pick, and I picked second. And we were picking right after each other, of course. So sometimes you picked before me, and on other times I picked right before you. So my question is to you: were there any players that I selected that you were hoping would make it back to you?
There were a couple. When I came into draft day, knowing I had the number 1 pick, I knew that the turns were going to be important because I was basically going to get 2 players and then wait for 20 something picks to get the next 2. So certainly I think the running back squad might have been a little shorter on the turns when it came back to me sometimes with your running back strong draft strategy. But I still think I put together a pretty solid team.
You definitely put a good team together. It's great. I think the only player that I was targeting that you took ahead of me was Jahan Dotson of the Commanders. He was definitely on my short list, even though it was towards the end. But that was someone I was looking at for sure.
Yeah, he seems very interesting. Like,
and he went.
That might pay off in the long run. Might have a little slow start, but in the long run, sounds kind of interesting.
So I don't even know why I thought picking Kyle Stinky Pitts would put a wrench in your draft day. I should have taken the receiver. That's for sure. I should
never know. I could have decided to be a homer and go with Kyle Pitts. That might have been that might have been somebody I wanted.
So yeah, I actually thought you were going to take Pitts there, and then after I took him, you're like, "Thank you, I did not want to take that guy." And that's when I knew it was a mistake. And I'm already trying to unload him, and I can't find a home for him. Even Bernie won't take him. It's a mess. And I swear that was not my plan. But were you surprised that I waited to the 13th round to take a receiver? I mean, what I thought here was to take the best player available, regardless of position, and I didn't want to reach for a receiver. And I thought that I thought I could get in a later round. However, they would not fall to me, and I keep having to take. I kept taking a running back. That's where the value was when they came back to me. So, I mean, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely my philosophy as well, was the best player available. But I also thought about it from the positional standpoint of the risk of waiting. So there were a couple of times where I felt like I probably needed that. I very likely reached to get some players. But that was kind of my philosophy going in, was really reach for the best available, but also look at just the type of lineup that I'm putting together. And sometimes I'm going to have to take one of those picks that, Yahoo's like, well, you really reached for that, didn't you?
Right. So usually I'm not in the early part of the draft, or at least I haven't been. And it just seemed that receivers were going on the other end of the draft board, and running back value kept falling on our end of the draft board.
Yeah, it did seem that way. I mean, it looks that way when you look at the draft board of just kind of where the color coding is. I've only been the number 1 pick once ever in any of my drafts, and it was the year that David Johnson was supposed to go completely nuts with the Arizona Cardinals, and then broke his hand in week 2. And needless to say, that was not my year.
So Justin Jefferson was pretty much clearly the consensus number 1 pick. But were you considering anyone else with that pick, or were you locked in on Jefferson the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of went with the draft board. I did look at I did consider seriously whether it was going to be Christian McCaffrey or Justin Jefferson, because I was a little on the fence about running back versus wide receiver. And in the end, I felt like that there were enough of those kind of high round 2 low round 2, early round 3 type of running backs that would still have good production. So I decided to go wide receiver first.
Right. So on my board, I had McCaffrey number 1, I had Tyreek Hill number 2, and I had Jefferson number 3. And that's why I think I would have been a much more comfortable with that 3rd, 4th, or 5th pick. I'm pretty sure Jimerson took Tyreek Hill with the 6th pick. And then, of course, with that, you get the higher 2nd round pick on the way back. Although I must say Josh Jacobs was the last person on my round 2 tier. So I was fortunate to get that a good value there.
I'm used to drafting the mid to late. So it was definitely a new experience going early.
So I haven't conferred with my brother yet, but I wonder if he would approve of the running back heavy roster build I did. That seems to be his general strategy when he drafts.
I was going to say maybe he has some tips for you, but maybe those aren't the tips that you need.
Exactly. So I mentioned it before, but it looks like you're playing Ken's Tampa Brady this week, and he too is undefeated. He's 1-0, and his team, like yours, is very balanced, and this should be a pretty good matchup with a decent challenge for your squad this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. We're pretty evenly split on the projection. So at this point, it's going to be just checking my injuries, seeing how people are doing, and then adjusting lineups appropriately on Sunday. But it should be a really good match, I think. Do
you have anybody
week, and it's going to be like I lost by 2 points, but
Right. Do you have anyone playing in the late night games, Sunday night or Monday night this week? Or are they all the day games on Sunday? The Dolphins are playing the Patriots on Sunday night, and there are 2 Monday night games this week. We have the Browns against the Steelers and the Saints at the Panthers.
I think most of my players I think most of my players are Sunday daytime during the regular 1 or 4 games.
Yeah, it's kind of nice It's kind of nice when you have most of your points banked in during those Sunday games and not have to sweat it out during the primetime games.
Yeah, it's just like, this is just what it is now. So here we go.
So did you happen to watch the Jets-Bills game this past Monday night?
Yes, and I watched the sack injury, and I was like, oh, poor Jets. I felt pretty bad. I felt mostly bad for myself because Garrett Wilson wasn't going to get anything.
Yeah, right.
He scored a touchdown. I think it was like late 4th quarter, and I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. So I think we broke up there for a moment, but you were just commenting on how Rodgers' injury may hurt Garrett Wilson going forward. But what I wanted to mention about that game was how Bernie's team came back during the late part of that game. So he needed 11 points from his Jets defense going into that night. And there was a point during the game where the Jets had already had 8 points. And then Josh Allen bobbled a snap, lunged forward, and he fumbled the ball. And the stats recorded as just a fumble recovery for the Jets. But sometimes when a quarterback fumbles in the backfield, the defense may also get credit for a sack. So at that point, the fantasy score had Bernie down by 2. But I thought that he may only really be down by 1, depending on how they correct it later. But it would have been very interesting and definitely devastating to end up with a loss via stat correction later in the week.
That would have been rough.
So, but luckily with the walk-off overtime punt return for a touchdown, Bernie's team cleared the points with a few to spare. But I mean, Allen was lunging forward to the line of scrimmage, so I guess they deemed it a rush attempt. But that would have been a very weird situation for them to just situation. Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting.
But
today I learned.
Yeah. But what a way to finish off the week with a go-ahead touchdown on the buzzer of Monday Night Football. And I still can't believe it. It was amazing.
It was. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening.
I don't know if Nick was awake or not, but I know Bernie wasn't, because when I texted him when it happened, he did not reply into the morning. That's a fun way to wake up. We're like, oh, what happened? All right, very good.
That's a nice thing to wake up to.
All right. Well, Katie, your team is awesome. I'm very jealous. I want to wish you good luck this week and for the rest of the season. And I definitely appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you so much.
You bet. Have a great night. It was good to talk to you.
A very big thank you to our guest, Katie. And I would like to also thank all of you who may be watching or listening to the show of Wingman Fantasy Football, the League podcast. Until we meet again, may your glasses be full, your mugs stay frosty, and we will see you next time.